Hi everyone, and today we are going to read about a new IPO which is Anthem Bioscience. So before starting the report, if someone wants to go directly to the financial analysis part or the peer comparison, they can check the timestamps, and I would urge that if someone who is not familiar with the pharma sector, so they can watch the whole video to understand and get a good brief of the sector. So let's start with the report. So Anthem Bioscience is a fast growing CRDMO company. So CRDMO means the Contract Research Development and Manufacturing Organization company. So there are three types of companies in the pharma sector, which is the CRO, which is the CRDMO and the CDMO companies. So CRDMO itself defines us that they are doing the research part, the development and the manufacturing part of the drug. And currently they're offering end-to-end services in the drug discovery, development and the manufacturing for both the new chemical entity, which means the small molecules which is made up of tablets and pills, and new biological entities, for example like vaccines. And Anthem is also serving to one of the big biotech and pharma companies, and also they have crossed the 1000 crore revenue mark within the 14 years and recorded the highest growth among the peers in FY25. And now if we take a look at their shareholding pattern, so currently promoters have 77% stake in the company and others are 23.1%, and after the IPO when it will get listed in the markets, so the promoters will have 74.6% stake and public and others will consist of 25.4%. So that is a very good thing that they are not diluted much equity in the markets. And now if we take a look at some of the most used terms in the pharma sector, so these are the terms in which many people get confused, and now I have tried to simplify it in a much easier way. So the first term is the KSM, which is the key starting material, the raw material from which it is started. So it is started with a chemical name aminophenol. Also we can take another example like building, where the raw material or the base starting material is the land. And then if we come to the next term, which is the intermediate, so it is the in-between step during the API making. So intermediate is something which is a step before paracetamol, and for the example in the building we used, we can say that we are collecting cement, bricks to make the building. The third term is the API, where the main chemical that treat us, which is the paracetamol itself, and we can say that the building has been made, but as of now the building is not completed yet. And the last term is the formulation, where it is converted into final usable medicine, and in the example of buildings we can say that the building is now fully completed with all the amenities. And now let's come to the next part, which is the revenue segment. So here we can look that they have two revenue segments. The first is the CRDMO and the second is the specialty ingredients. So within the CRDMO, they have research and development and DNM, which is the development and manufacturing part. And if we take a look at the revenue from each segment, so in FY23, CRDMO consisted of 808 crores, which was 76.5% of the revenue, and development and manufacturing consisted 60% of it. And if we take a look at the specialty ingredients, it consisted of 23.5% of the revenue. And if we take a look at FY25, so now they have a revenue of 1500 crores and CRDMO consists of 81.7% of the revenue, and specialty ingredients consist of 18.3% of the revenue. So we can clearly see that they have increased their revenue allocation more towards CRDMO and specifically toward the development and the manufacturing part, where more margin is there. Now let's take a look at the geographic diversifications over the years. So here we can see that in FY23, North America consisted of 47.3% of the revenue, then Europe consisted of 29%, and then India with 20%. And now in FY25, they have reduced their allocation from North America to 26.4%. They have increased their allocation in Europe from 29% to 54.6%, and in India, they have reduced from 20.2 to 16.6%. And now let's come to the next part, where we will try to understand the industry overview of the pharma sector. And within the pharma industry, here we can see the two segments. The first is the CRO, which is the research part, and second is the CDMO, where they do the development and the manufacturing part. So within the CRO, these are the three steps. The first is the discovery, where the drug has been discovered. The second and third is the preclinical and the clinical part, and in these two steps the drug testing and the finalization part is done. And within the CDMO segment, there comes the small molecule and the biologics part. And now if we take a look at the image I have attached on the right hand side, so in FY24, the CRDMO global market stood at $213 billion, and it is expected that in 2029 it is going to be $330 billion. And on the right, there is a data point about the Indian CRDMO market, which is currently in FY24 was 8.2 billion USD dollars, and it is expected that the Indian markets are going to be around 15.4 billion dollars in FY29. And now let's come to the next segment, where we will do the peer comparison in this industry. So here we can see that apart from Anthem, there are other players like Syngene, Sai Life Science, Cohance and Divi's laboratory. Divis is one of the biggest player in the Indian pharma sector, and if you take a look at the market cap, Anthem has 32,000 crore of market cap, whereas for Divi's lab it is 1,85,000 crores of market cap. But here comes the interesting data point. If you take a look at the EBITDA margins, so Anthem has the highest EBITDA margin of 36.4% compared to all the other players, whereas Divi's has a 31.7% of EBITDA margins. And if you take a look at net profit margins, Anthem has 24.5%, which is still higher than all the players, and Divi's has 23.4% of margins. And if you compare PE of all the companies, so currently Anthem has 71 PE, Syngene has 52, whereas if you take a look at Divi's lab, so their PE is 84.7. Even if you take a look at ROE, they have 18.7%, which is still higher than all the other companies in this segment, and Divi's has 15.4% of ROE. And lastly, if you come to the ROCE, Anthem has 26.5%, whereas Divi's has 20.4%. So after reading this data point, there might be a question that is Anthem better than Divi's lab? So the obvious answer is no, because Divi's is already a very big company, they have huge volume capacity, and they are already well established in the pharma sector. And now let's come to the next segment, where we will do the financial analysis. So in FY23, they had 1050 crore of revenue, and in FY25, it went up to 1845 crores, and they saw a YOY growth of 34.3% in FY24 and 30% in FY25. If we take a look at their gross margins, so in FY23, it was 67.9%, and now currently it is 59.7%. And if we take a look at their EBITDA margins, in FY23, it was 40.6%, and in FY25 it came down to 36.4%. And if we come to the last part, which is the PAT margins, so in FY23 it was 36.4%, and in FY25 it is 24.5%. And now let's take a look at the balance sheet of the Anthem. So one of the interesting point in their balance sheet is that if we take a look at their debt, which is almost negligible and currently at 109 crores, and if we take a look at their reserve and surplus, it is almost 2300 crores. So definitely financially and the balance sheet wise, company is very strong. And now if we take a look at their cash flow statement, so here we can see that in FY23 they had CFO of 306 crores, now it has come up to 418 crores. So that's a very good sign. And now let's go to the next segment, where we will see the key highlights in FY25. So one of the very good point of the company is they act as a one-stop service. They are fully integrated, customized CRDMO services across the NCE and the NBE life cycle. So from target identification to the phase 1 till phase 3 clinical trials and the commercial manufacturing part, they're doing everything. Also, they're one of the few Indian CRDMO companies which are in the small and the large molecules. Currently in FY25, they have 242 projects, and 54% of the revenue comes from the commercialized molecules, and also they have 4 blockbuster drugs which have revenue potential of more than $1 billion. The second point is that they have fully built automated manufacturing infra, and as of March 25, they have 2 GMP compliant manufacturing units in India which are in Bangalore, and they have an annual capacity of 270 kiloliters of custom synthesis and 142 kiloliters for fermentation. And also they are expanding their capacity to 130 kiloliters, which is expected to be fully operational by the first half of FY26. And one more good data point of the company is that currently they have one of the highest asset turnover ratio of more than 1.5x. The third point is that they have a very wide specialty ingredient portfolio. So currently they have good tech capabilities across the biology and chemistry, and they have also developed and commercialized specialty products. So within the specialty ingredient portfolio, they have fermentation products, which means that the good microbes is converted from one thing to another useful thing. For example, which means probiotics, enzymes, nutritional actives, vitamin analogs, biosimilar and APIs. And also recently, they have successfully commercialized the natural vitamin K2 ingredient, and in India, as of FY25, they have one of the largest fermentation capacity of 142 kiloliters. And the last point is that they have a very long-standing relationship with a large, diversified and a loyal customer base. So over the last 3 years, the company has worked with 287 customers, and the top 10 customers in FY25, they had an average length of relationship of 12 years. So that's a very good sign. And now if we take a look at the image I have attached on the right hand side, so these are the manufacturing facilities which are unit 1, 2 and 3, and all these units are in Bangalore. So here we can see that in unit 1, the fermentation percentage of capacity utilization has increased from 69.2% to 95.3% in FY25. And if we take a look at unit 2, so in the custom synthesized part, so their percentage of capacity utilization increased from 65.1% to 95.3%, but in the fermentation, it has decreased from 61.7 to 47.5%. And if we take a look at the last unit, so in the unit 3, only custom synthesis is going on with a percentage capacity utilization of 17.8%. And now let's come to the last segment where we will see the risk in the company. So in FY25, the top 5 and the top 10 customers contributed 71% and 77.3% of the revenue. And the second risk is the revenue concentration in the CRDMO services, which is 81.7% of the FY25 revenue. The third risk in the company is about the manufacturing of molecules. In FY23, they saw a revenue dip because of the failure of the phase 3 molecule. And the last risk is the government regulations. So thank you for watching this video. I hope this detailed analysis of the Anthem IPO was useful, and write down in the comment section that what do you feel about the company and how it will do in the coming future. Until then, see you in the next video.